Hello, everyone, and welcome to a highly anticipated episode of the Untitled Marvel Project / a classic backlot banter movie review. I'm your host, Tanner Dykstra, joined as always by my classic Marvel-loving buddies, Tucker Hazel and Abram Buhner. We are here today to, of course, talk about a highly anticipated film, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This is a big one, fellas, and I can't wait to talk about it with you. This film had a lot of expectations going in, but before we get into all of that, I want to invite you, the viewer, to like this video, to subscribe to Backlog Banter if you're not already, and to join the Discord. That link is in the description. There, you can talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever with us. You can talk about all the Marvel movies, all the Marvel TV shows, God knows there's a plethora of those, or, believe it or not, anything else.
No.
But with that out of the way, we got a lot to talk about here, fellas. 2 hours and 40 minutes of Black Panther, specifically, to talk about. And I want to throw it over to Tucker Hazel. I want to hear your initial thoughts on Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
This is a good movie. I feel like I'm conflicted about it. I feel like it's a movie that I need to sit with more and maybe see again to sort of pick up some pieces that I might have passed over or forgotten in the long runtime of this film, because there's a long runtime of this film, as you alluded to. But while I do think it's a good movie, I'm not quite sure if it really hits how I want it to, and I do think it has some pretty stark flaws that I want to call into conversation. But overall, it didn't hit the highs that I wanted, but what it did hit was a very consistent quality for me. I was engaged throughout. I was invested in these characters. There's some good performances, lots of cool concepts, and I was like, yeah, this is a good ride. But it didn't. There wasn't any like super high emotional moments or like really hype action sequences. It was just like it's a good ride all the way through.
Yeah, Abram Buhner.
This movie kind of made me sad, to be honest.
Oh, I see.
I liked it. I liked it fine. I don't think that the characters of the film, or probably more germane to our conversation, the people making it, were able to really reconcile the passing of Chadwick Boseman, because I think that he looms so large over the film, and his passing looms even larger, that I don't think the movie really recovers from it. I think that it's really unfocused. I think that it wants to be more of a sort of emotional catharsis than it is. I think that it's sort of just trapped between a bunch of ideas, and I ended up watching it and just feeling like aimless. I think the movie feels very aimless. I agree with you, Tucker. I think it has a lot of really amazing ideas and visual motifs and moments, but I think that it's ultimately kind of affirmed to me what I said before the film came out, which was, I don't think you can make this movie without him.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel vindicated in that, walking out.
Sure. Abram, I find myself agreeing with you on a number of the points you raised there, because as I alluded to in the intro of this video, there was a lot of expectations for this film, and there's a lot of things this film tries to be. It tries to be a heartfelt, emotionally resonant send-off for Chadwick Boseman in the role of T'Challa, the Black Panther.
I would say in some ways that's probably its main goal, frankly.
Yeah. It also tries to be a next chapter in the Black Panther series, and more largely, the next big step in the chronology of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in trying to be all of these things, I think it succeeds only partially in all of them, quite frankly. And of course, there's a number of things I want to get into. I do want to open up starting about Letitia Wright, because she is the lead of this movie as much as of a lead that this movie has. But I do want to say that we've given our open initial thoughts now, and I think we should just give an audience warning right here. We're going to do full spoilers from here on out. So yes, go see Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We all agree that we liked the movie, so go watch it.
And I do think in terms of cultural impact, this is one to see. We all watched Black Panther when it came out, one of the highest grossing movies of all time, nominated for Best Picture, yada, yada, yada. Everyone mourned the loss of Chadwick Boseman and respected him so much as an actor, and continuing not only the saga of the MCU, but continuing the story that Black Panther, the first movie, set up, that the world of Wakanda that has become so entrenched and important not only in the MCU but in world culture for representation, for what it means of putting different faces behind the camera and on the big screen. It's an important one to see, and luckily I do think they got that aspect of it right. It feels like a heartfelt movie. It is just unfortunately in the shadow of Chadwick Boseman's passing and lack of presence, and I think Abrams is absolutely right in that the film's identity focuses so much on trying to actually just stay in that shadow. Like it doesn't really take too many steps to be like, let's leave this shadow, we can leave that behind, but it's like still it's consistently in that shadow, and so even though it's an important movie to watch, it's a good movie, I do think that there is a conflict with the fact that they tried their best, but they just can't really escape what the past has left behind.
Yeah. Very well put, Tucker. And so, yes, full spoilers from here on out, because I want to talk about Letitia Wright in the role of Shuri here. Because, and I said full spoilers, she is the new Black Panther. Surprise,
No
surprise.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. There was theories abound of, like, maybe Nakia is the new Black Panther. Maybe it's M'Baku or whoever, or, maybe it's Everett Ross.
You see that shot at the end of the first one? You're like, that's M'Baku's ass.
Yes, exactly. Or there was even theories that, like, multiple people take on the Black Panther mantle. But no, it is Shuri, of course, as largely predicted initially. And Letitia Wright, I want to talk about her performance here. Because this is a movie that hinges on her and her performance. I don't think she's as good as the movie requires her to be. Especially not initially. Because her whole motivation is that Shuri needs to be the Joker. And here's what I mean by that. It is explicitly said to us towards the beginning of the movie by Angela Bassett, by Ramonda, that she wants to watch the world. Oh no, Shuri says this line. She wants to watch the world burn because of she is scorned by the passing of her brother and the treatment of Wakanda by the international community. That never comes across in Letitia Wright's performance for me personally. That is a huge character turn for her to take that is never indicated in Wright's performance and is only told to us through dialogue. And I feel like it only really starts to hit those notes when we're 40 minutes from the end of the movie, when she's taken on the mantle of the Black Panther, when she sees Killmonger in the ancestral plane and things like that. That's when I feel like it starts hitting there for me, when it should have been there the whole time, and that part of the movie should have been a distinct turning point for that character arc.
I have to push back on that a little bit, not only because I disagree. I think her performance was actually surprisingly good across the entire movie, but I think that it actually makes sense that that's where those notes start to come out, because you know what really causes that is the passing of the Queen Mother Ramonda, and that's what really wigs her out and sets her on her path to take revenge against Namor and Talocan and all that. So the fact that that's when those notes really start coming out, I think that absolutely makes sense, because she's pushing back against the passing of her brother, against like the, in her eyes, oppressive nature of the culture and history and traditions of Wakanda. But it isn't until her mother dies and she suddenly has the burden of the world on her shoulders, no longer the childish freedom to just work on her toys in her lab, that she actually has the power to do those things. Because up to this point, she's just, pushing back against her mom, but largely listening to her mom. And her mom's like, no, you can't go do this. You can't go do that. I want to keep you safe. And now, once her mother's passed, then that fully comes to fruition. So I think that absolutely makes sense in terms of how that's paced out.
I'm not saying that, and I think that her performance in those moments are good, and that's where Letitia Wright really turns it on for me in her performance. But I feel like we can't go 0 to 100 there. I feel like it needs to be present in her performance beforehand, especially since she says she feels that way, but we never see that come across until that turning point. Which, Tucker, you're right. That's when it should have become, hit a fever pitch, essentially. But again, we go 0 to 100, at least in my eyes.
I I agree with both of you. I think to varying extents, and I think
Always in the
it's
middle.
God,
always
Gotta pick
in
a
the
side.
middle.
Come on, buddy.
I think Tanner, for me, it's more of a script issue than a performance
Yeah,
issue
I
Yeah.
also thought about that. Is that it might be a writing issue?
because I think Letitia Wright is pretty good in the movie. But I'm just not sure that she's given the moments I want her to be given because this is a film that is surprisingly plot heavy.
Mhm.
Which I didn't necessarily expect because especially after that first trailer, the big trailer,
Hmm.
it was all about the vibes, right? And going into the film, I expected something that was going to be far more about story and about sort of, I don't know if introspection is the right word because ultimately this is still a four quadrant enormous blockbuster,
Hmm.
but I expected more time for the characters to sit with their feelings,
Hmm.
and we don't necessarily get a lot of that until the film is racing towards its own conclusion. Because for I felt like for a long period of the narrative, sort of the characters' thoughts and how they're processing events is kind of backgrounded in favor of this big, like multi-plane, like geopolitical struggle. And it's not really until the last, as you're saying, 10 or 40 minutes of the movie or so, that we see Letitia Wright actually get a moment to reflect on everything. And it's actually the end of the film when I think we get the moment that I was waiting for, and I think illustrates her acting talent, which is her burning the mourning robes.
Hmm.
But even that to me felt strange because it felt like the ending was just sort of like interjected, and that directed by Ryan Coogler hit when I wasn't really expecting it over
Yeah.
this sort of strange interpolation of old footage of Chadwick Boseman. And so I just don't think that the film was really prepared to give Letitia Wright the space to do what the emotions of the character were asking her to do.
Yeah, maybe I am coming down a little bit too hard on Letitia Wright and her performance. You're very correct, Abram. And it did occur to me in the theaters, like, is this a performance issue? Is this a writing issue? Because first and foremost, those beats need to be in the script for Letitia Wright to act out. And
Sure.
I don't know if they were or not. Have not read the
Yeah.
script for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So it's a toss up for me. But I think regardless, it is an issue for me in the movie.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Where are we
I
going next? I think that actually the most important thing to spin off of this from is the. Oh no, we're
Well,
waving
I was going to
fingers.
ask if we
Oh,
can stay
yeah.
on her and the actual Black Panther
Oh
turn
sure, no,
of
yeah,
her
you're
character.
right. You're right.
Yes.
Because obviously it was going to be Shuri, although I did think for a little while it's going to be Okoye when she's stripped of the
Potentially, yeah.
general role. That seemed like a nice way for her to redeem herself in part. Um, but I found the whole synthetically recreating the heart herb and getting the suit and getting into the fight as Black Panther
Hmm.
to feel quite rushed.
Hmm.
And then to me, I think it goes back to my point I was making before about there's a lot of plot here,
Yeah.
but we spend very little time with the donning of the suit and with
No time.
yeah, and with
We cut from the
ensuring-
suit doesn't exist until she has the
Right.
suit
He's
and
dropping out of the plane. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just found that to be quite unsatisfying, especially because this role of the Black Panther means so much both to the universe and to our real audience universe.
Hmm.
But it really felt like, oh shoot, we need her in the suit for the action sequence and to complete her arc. And I just didn't like that very much. I have to say I wanted more time spent. I wanted that to mean a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense of that edit especially is jarring. It does feel like there's a 30-second sequence missing of her coming up with suit designs or whatever it is, though I guess I can understand the tone in that moment being more of, she's just coming out of the ancestral plane and realizing that her synthetic heart-shaped herb has worked and she has these powers and boom, okay, it worked, we need to get on this fast. And then maybe there's not really the space for an Amazing Spider-Man 1 style testing out suit designs and making sure that it's got her flavor of suit. because the next sequence is also pretty serious tonally of her confronting the elders and talking to M'Baku about the fact that she wants to go take revenge on Namor and Talokan. Like, I do think that I understand why there's not this progression that maybe it feels like we're missing, but I also do think that the reason that doesn't stick out too much to me, even though again I still think that edit is strange, is that the pacing of learning that as she's working on the synthetic heart-shaped herb to heal T'Challa at the very beginning of the movie, to her conflict between the technology that she's working on and versus the traditions that Wakanda and her mother and Nakia are trying to put onto her, but she's rejecting. The progression of that into her being able to use her own methods to become the Black Panther, I think is actually surprisingly poignant, and the reason why I am more on board with her being Black Panther than I expected to be. I wanted it to be Nakia or Okoye so bad. I'm like, please don't make Letitia Wright the right thing. But I liked her performance more than I expected to, and I do think that that character development of her being able to take Wakanda into a entirely new direction in terms of integrating technology, her own technology, and rejecting traditions where she doesn't feel like they're necessary is a really fascinating way to watch Wakanda grow. Because you think of the fact that we have T'Challa letting Wakanda out onto the world at the end of Black Panther, which we have only seen glimpses of, and even in this movie. But I do think that the internal changing of Wakanda, now that Shuri is queen, and as we watch that sort of build over the course of the movie, is a really cool way to have Wakanda change in a more like cultural sense. And so I found that to be really, really interesting.
I just think because I like what you're saying, but I feel like with most of the film, I wanted more time to really see that unfold and sort of see.
Add another hour. Come on, Brian.
Come on now. 4 hours of Black Panther.
Well, that's what's interesting about it, because I feel like we cover a lot of ground in 3 hours, but I'm not sure how well that time was really used. Because I would have liked to see what does it mean for her to be the new Black Panther.
Sure. Yeah.
For Wakanda, because I think that for me might have helped sort of some of the things you're saying be a little bit less. I feel like inference makes it sound like you're just making stuff up, but have to. I feel like you have to reach for a lot of the things you're saying. Whereas I wanted a little bit more of an understanding of what her as Black Panther really meant, I guess.
Abram, you bring up a point of, we cover a lot of ground. And I feel like what's important to talk about next year, we've addressed the big main player here, is the plot of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Boy howdy, is there a lot of plot in this movie. And maybe, maybe this is where people draw the distinction between plot and story, because there is a lot of plot points that happen here. We are, we have found vibranium on the ocean floor, and then we found it using this vibranium detection machine that was created by Riri Williams, which is a character we have to plug into this movie to seed her into future MCU projects. So then we introduce the Atlanteans, or I guess
Telecans.
Excuse me, and they don't want the the vibranium to be mined from the ocean floor, and then everyone thinks the Wakandans are doing it. So we have to go to Chicago, or sorry, no. She's from Chicago. She's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is where Riri Williams is from.
Specifically at MIT.
Yeah, there you go. Specifically at MIT. We have to go there, get her. There's a big fight there. Then we get dragged down to, I forget the name of the city.
Talokan? It's just the capital city of Talokan.
Okay, Talokan. And then we're there for a little bit, and then we go back up to Wakanda. And what I'm saying is that there's a lot of story points here, and the intricacies of the Talokan v Wakanda thing are perhaps too convoluted, I feel, because there's a lot of intertwining things, which I feel is important for the international conflict storyline that they're going for here. But ultimately, I found myself scratching my head in the theater, what specifically does everyone want here? What is everyone's goals here? So yeah, I what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think that the plot is way over encumbered, and I don't even really know what the movie's about. and that might be my fault as a stupid audience member, but I think that this movie wants to both be far too intimate and far too global at the same time.
Yeah.
And the result is sort of an inability for me to understand how all of these moving pieces end up clicking together.
Sure.
Because what I like about the plot is that it brings a lot of different people into conversation, and it brings us to some really interesting locations. The sequence of going down into Telecon when Shuri is taken there, and you've got that wonderful song in the background, and we're seeing the city. That's some of, in my opinion, some of the most mesmerizing filmmaking in the MCU. I love that sequence.
Yeah.
But I just think that when you zoom out for a second, I find it hard to really understand what's going on in terms of there's this conflict here between the Telecon and Wakanda, right? Between these two cities or nations, I suppose. But then there's also this unmined narrative about the Western world exploiting resources.
Yeah.
But the film seems, for probably behind the scenes production politicking reasons, unwilling to hold the US or France actually accountable as a villain in the narrative, but instead want to just hint at these ideas of
and only bring it up once or twice in passing.
Right, hint at what is the real world truth of, if the United States or another power had vibranium, they would fuck up the entire world,
which is a good line, made me think.
But that's the plot of your movie, not a throwaway line. But when that gets muddled in with this other conflict, I'm just like, why are these two people fighting each other?
Yeah,
and what is going on with the U.S.? What is going on is my question, I suppose.
The U.S. thing, I think, is the real monkey wrench in this set of gears. Maybe I was just able to inference more. I'm so good at inferencing.
He's inferring.
But it's also,
my God.
Who gives a turkey? But I honestly think that this movie is, for my taste, surprisingly simple in terms of the plot. Is that Talokan doesn't want to be exposed, and they want Wakanda's help to not be exposed, because that would lead to the downfall of their culture, because they're the only other place that has vibranium, and suddenly the world wants vibranium because they know Wakanda is out. Like I think that's a pretty simple, like, okay, Talokan is a mirror for Wakanda, just in a different sort of way. And then that is conflicted by the fact that that Namor wants revenge on the surface world for the history of colonialism and taking of resources and all of that. That brings not only Wakanda and Talokan, but Shuri and Namor into direct conflict in a way that, frankly, I think is pretty simple. It's Riri is the catalyst for this. Talokan doesn't want to be unearthed because they're afraid that their city and way of life will be destroyed. And Wakanda is sort of caught in the middle of this because they instigated it, but not really. And then they fight. Like, for me, it's pretty simple. But I think in that simplicity, I was much more able to focus on the characters of what Namor wants, what Shuri wants, rather than the sort of large-scale political thing, which I think is where this movie is at its weakest, is when you're thinking, what the fuck were Val and Ross doing in this movie? Why were they involved? Why did we keep cutting back to the fact that they're being interviewed about Wakanda, maybe in the U.S., things like that? Like, that is superfluous. It tries to feed you an extra narrative that is not supported, but in terms of amount of screen time, amount of depth given to the dialogue, it really is about interpersonal conflicts and the way that Ramonda wants to get her daughter back and will do anything at all costs for that, or the fact that she's mad at Okoye and Nakia is just getting pulled back into this. The character work done for the supporting cast, especially, I mean, this is an ensemble film, I think is really where the meat and potatoes of this film are. So for me, definitely not with a convoluted plot like you guys are saying.
Well, here's what I'm talking about, I guess, Tucker. If we can, cut a bit more deeply into this, is that, okay, Namor wants to kill Riri Williams because she can make another vibranium-finding device.
Yeah.
He captures Riri and Shuri. And then shows Shuri around Telecon and has Riri there and
but doesn't kill her.
Doesn't kill her.
Yeah, I was
Why?
thinking that doesn't make any fucking sense. No, I don't know why.
And then
Doesn't make
he's
any sense.
like, we want Wakanda's help to get revenge on the surface world. And Shuri's like, no. And he's like, okay, we're going to war with you. Okay? And then, obviously they escape and everything. And then he does invade Wakanda and kills Queen Ramonda. And then he's like, now I'm going back to the ocean, and you have a decision to make. A decision to make about turning over Riri or siding with them, or both in the same time.
Will you be alongside us? If you won't be, we'll continue to destroy. Like, we'll come back and destroy Wakanda again for real this time. For realsies this time.
For realsies this time, of course.
Yeah.
So
we only flooded you a little bit. We're gonna do more next time.
naturally, yes. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, and it is, there's it may ultimately be a small thing, but like the thing of like Riri is a catalyst for this, as you mentioned, but then she very much falls by the wayside, as I feel the plot forgets about her and sort of moves on to be about different things and involve different characters than it initially set up and wanted to.
Yeah, which is especially obvious between the amount of time Okoye is in the first half of the film and the second half of the film, in which you shift from having Okoye as the secondary protagonist to Nakia being the secondary protagonist.
Yes.
Yeah, I still just don't really think it makes sense. And I just keep coming back to this idea of like, I get what you're saying 100%, Tucker, but I feel myself more on Tanner's side of like, it feels like the connective tissue is just not there.
Sure. Yeah.
And sure, Riri Williams is the catalyst, but are you really going to look me dead in the eye and say that the catalyst for the plot of your film is that Riri Williams can just make a device that finds something that nobody else can find?
Yeah.
Now you're telling me that's what the movie's about? And I think that at a certain point, even if you can make linear sense of it, it's unsatisfying as an audience member. And I think that Riri Williams is a great example of that, because I like the character of Ironheart. But Ironheart exists only to further the plot.
Yeah.
Or I'll put it this way, only exists to establish the plot, and then only exists to establish yourself as a character that's going to have a TV show later.
Yes.
And I found that to be quite disappointing, as the movie, to your point, Tucker, sort of plugs in and out characters as the direct, necessity of the scene allows for, and can only juggle these balls insofar as there's a very deliberate necessity to put Okoye in a new set of armor that looks cool, or get Riri Williams in the air to have the Iron Man shot and then to remind you that she exists in the universe. And I just don't think that for me, is very effective storytelling when it feels so transparent.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say about the story, because upon reflecting on it, upon talking about it, of course, we've just seen this moments ago, less than an hour ago. We walked out of it, or about
zero time to reflect, zero time to hear theories from other people, zero time to rewatch it. Of course, these things will become clearer over time naturally.
And insofar as becoming clearer, I think that, Tucker, you're correct. It's not as convoluted as I initially set out and believe. I think it's maybe just like I was trying to fit these things together in the movie as I was watching it, and also formulate a bunch of other thoughts about the character dynamics and the technical prowess of the film and all these things. But yeah, it's not as complicated as I had initially set out in this criticism. And I feel like we are. Yeah, I myself am criticizing it overly comparative to how much I like this film, I think, because I want to talk some positives here. I don't know. I want to talk some positives here, and I could be alone in liking this thing, specifically this performance and character. I like Tinha Huerta as Namor. I think he's a real highlight of the movie. Namor is famously in the source material of the comics a real shitheel of a character, a real I'm the best dude in the whole wide world, and no one else can touch me on my level. I'm the best guy, essentially. He's real narcissist, and I feel that we don't hit that fever pitch of character in this. He's not cartoonishly like, I am literally the best person on the entire planet. But I feel that his narcissism and self-obsessed nature is there in moments enough for me to be like, I see what they're doing with this character. I'm getting what Namor is about here.
Yeah, I definitely think that it is a better interpolation of that character trope for the tone that this movie is going for. And I think he's also pretty good. I think visually, absolutely the part. I really love the way that his accent and physical look blends into the jewelry that he's wearing and that costuming. And he has a great physical presence when he's doing the rock eyebrow and leaning over,
or just when he's hang on, I'm gonna do some physical. Here we go.
Oh, what's up? What's going on here?
Coming out of the water. He has a good,
he's just dripping and he's doing a rock eyebrow.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that we have this character that is, and you're right, in the source material, this overly confident, self-obsessed guy, he's never, in this interpolation of the character, has never gotten the chance to be put up against other people like that, because Talokan has been contained for his entire life, which is the entire history of this culture. But I do think that there is a really interesting character concept there of he is self-confident in his nature because he has been the king of these people for the entire history of their civilization.
King Tucker, they're God, mind you. They're God.
And literally treated as a god by outside people, like the people in the Mayan cultures and still to this day on the islands around there. There are reasons that his self-confidence has been built, and like very real reasons, not just like he's just like coming up with it. Like he is insanely strong, and he can take down an entire fleet of guys, and he is treated as a god, and he has been the king of this civilization. Like, yeah, of course this guy thinks he's the shit to a certain degree, and I think that is why I find him such a compelling character. And while I don't think his performance is on the level of Michael B. Jordan's as Killmonger in the original Black Panther, I think the way that the history of Talokan and his history and the way that he was treated and the wanting to protect his culture and way of life, for me, hits those same notes as Killmonger did in that other movie, just in a different interpolation of culture clash and worrying about your history and the protection of your own culture. So I found him to be a good performance, not a huge stand-up performance like you did, but visually make the treat, and character-wise very fascinating, and conceptually just awesome. So yeah, he's a big part of the movie for me.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite part of the film. I really like Namor. He's not a character that I'm familiar with from the comics, so I was meeting.
He's the first character. He's the first Marvel character. Yeah, Namor the Submariner.
Yeah, so I was meeting him for the first time in Wakanda Forever, and I'm really interested by him. I think that nonetheless, sort of like a lot of elements of this movie, I didn't get a good enough read on him because I don't think I really spent the time to understand his backstory. I'm still a little bit shaky on the whole. They drank the stuff and became the guild people, and then something happened, yet I don't really know.
Super inbred, by the way, those people. There was like a dozen of them when they went into the water, and then there's like hundreds, if not thousands of them. I'm like, ooh, those numbers don't shake out to be very good for me, but whatever.
I didn't think about that, huh?
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused by his backstory still, but
Tanner, that is how humanity works. There were less people back in the day.
No, God saw to it that that inbreeding.
Yeah. God took care of it.
God took care of it. Don't you worry, Tucker.
No, but I found that not like I said, that the sequence going into Telecon I loved. I thought it was mesmerizing, but I also I liked seeing him. I think that he is a very foreboding presence when he's on screen, and that's not always something I can say about Marvel villains. Even Thanos to me is a little bit silly, but I don't find Namor to be that silly. I think he just he really looks at like, this guy's a fucking problem, and I think that's really effective when you see him just ripping through people. I think that the final showdown between Shuri and Namor leaves something to be desired. But as a character, I liked him quite a bit, and I'm glad that he's still around because I'm excited to see sort of how he and his civilization are sort of foregrounded in hopefully another narrative that gives them a little bit more time to breathe.
No, he's got to hit on Sue Storm, as he's known to do in the comics quite a bit. But no, I do enjoy. Abram, you brought up the final showdown between Namor and Shuri, and I do like, classically, as a character who is to a certain extent, self-obsessed and self-confident. He must be humbled in this way. He must be shown that, he's not the head honcho who can take over the surface world and destroy Wakanda in one fell swoop. No, he gets schooled. Absolutely in this movie. He does stab Shuri though. I'll give him that. But no, he gets dragged and knocked down and fried and gets his one of his ankle wings ripped off. So yeah, I do enjoy that, this character gets humbled, and then the note we are left on with him is that the alliance makes Telecon stronger. That's the lesson that we're taking away here. Telecon is still strong, and the alliance makes us stronger.
Yeah, which does feed into that character.
Yeah.
We Telecon can be the greatest. We'll be the greatest, but we're just biding our time for the moment to strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do we want to talk about the technical aspects of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever? Because I feel like we have, we did some positives there for a little bit. Now I think we're gonna swing back into the negatives a little bit here, unfortunately, because keeping in the grand tradition of a Black Panther movie, visual effects a little shoddy here. Not gonna lie to you folks.
I think that it's a symptom of being made partially during the pandemic. I think it's partially a symptom of being probably reshot and re-edited and stitched together in so many different ways. But
great point.
There are many sequences where it feels obvious to me that these actors are not even in the same room, and they are sure as shit not on a set. I think of the conversation. Yes. There's a conversation between Riri and Shuri.
Yeah,
and
they're on the same side of the thing, but you can't see them. It's not a two-shot. It's a back and forth. God.
Yeah, and you just hear Shuri delivers a line yo, that's a good idea or whatever, and you had nobody to bounce off of for that, and that's not their fault. But I think that it is clear that this sort of transparently rushed Marvel visual glue is not quite holding this one together the way that I would want it to.
No, yeah, it's interesting that this is certainly the Marvel movie that I noticed the most visual problems with. And I think that it is a symptom of them trying a couple things to make what they have for the visual effects not as obvious that they're not that good, which is primarily that they put a little bit of... They blur everything out just a tidge. So
that wasn't just my eyes.
No, you're looking at this beautiful vista of Wakanda that is a really interestingly designed place, and you're like, can someone clean off the glass here? I know that they can do a beautiful, crystal clear shot of this amazing vista and these wonderfully designed architecture buildings, which are, of course, not actually real. They didn't build a full city, but they use blurring so frequently that it makes it really obvious that it's lagging. I think it does make it better, because it's not like we're looking at PS2 as basic texture buildings, because they put the filter on it, but the filter, it's almost more annoying than that. And I think that's also combined with the most egregious green screen volume use I've ever seen. Every single fucking sequence, they will be on this evidently amazing set of wherever it is they are in that cave down at the entrance to Calican. That's an awesome set. Or that little beachside area that Namor attacks initially. Awesome set. And then you'll cut into M'Baku and his boys standing on a boat where they are not. They're not anywhere. This is a void, and the most shallow depth of field of all time is making it obvious that there's nothing. There's no the lighting, the distance, nothing makes any sense. Yeah. And they use that in everything, and I think Abram made it crystal clear in my mind. It's because re-editing of we need the actors to come back and we need to put them in this area, but we can't go back to that place. And there is a lot of presumably world traveling here, and they have other locations, but stitching things together and making sure things make sense, because it does help the story have the characters talking and stuff. Let's stand them in front of the volume and make sure it's real blurry so that super shallow depth of field. God damn. That really started to annoy me throughout this movie.
Yeah. Speaking of stitching things together, I think the editing also needs to be brought up here, because you both touched on in the bit, but I think It's not. Yeah, I've certainly in recent months seen some pretty terribly edited 2022 major theatrical releases, and this is not one of them. I will say it's better than better than things like Amsterdam for sure. And something else.
Awful editing.
Yeah, something else that I saw
think
recently.
See How They Run has bad editing too.
Okay. Regardless,
Black Adam?
Black Adam, maybe. Regardless, I think that the editing here doesn't do the movie favors in sequences that are already weakened by like the visual effects or maybe rewrites or something like that. A personal favorite of mine, which Tucker also pointed out when we walked out of the theater, is is the beads. When Val the beads when Val is in Ross's kitchen in their superfluous, completely useless subplot of this movie, and she's talking about I knew the whole time and I was tracking the beads. It's just a very strange cut that I feel exemplifies like that it just puts you off kilter when you're watching this movie, and there's a number of those.
Yeah.
There's dialogue that is cut off. There is a shot that you feel like that should have gone for like a beat or two longer to feel super.
I want to
impactful.
see the line delivered by this actor, but they're cutting away to something else, or like I want these people to be like physically interacting a little more, but you're cutting back and forth between things, or inserting a shot of somewhere else, or another point in time, or like a flashback or whatever, and you're like, huh, what?
You raised 2 points I want to talk about. I want to talk about the editing in action, but I also want to talk about Everett Ross in particular.
Okay.
Let's just talk about Everett Ross.
Sure, why not? We'll Everett Ross talk.
And then we'll circle back to the action. But I think that Everett Ross is part of why I find the movie's plot so fucking confusing.
Sure.
Because I don't understand why he's in the movie. I don't even have anything
He
else
was
to
in the
say.
first one, that's why.
He even is that character poster real of Everett
Yes,
Ross?
that is a real character
Oh my
poster.
God.
It's
You
great.
can, if you have a Letterboxd Pro, you can change the official poster for the movie to that for yourself.
To just a dramatically shadowed picture
of the
Everett
only
Ross's
white
face.
dude in the movie. Yeah.
Can one of you two explain to me what he was doing in the movie?
Okay, Everett Ross was in the first Black Panther. Don't know if you knew that, Abram. And he has his role
He
in
owes
the MCU.
Shuri his life.
Yeah, it's true.
As
This
they
is true.
remind us of many
That
times.
is true.
Because he got
actually
shot
does.
in South Korea, and Shuri saved his life, brought him to Wakanda, the first outsider there in like however many years or whatever.
Ever, probably.
Yeah. And he subsequently becomes in the MCU like this connective tissue between Wakanda and like the U.S. government and the rest of the universe, essentially.
Right.
He's the guy who is friends with all the people in Wakanda, and they call him a colonizer, and he's like, "Oh, you guys, these classic ribs we throw back and forth." But no, the real answer is that he is the go between for Wakanda and the U.S. government, and there's a lot of blaming of Wakanda of things that the Telecons are doing here. Am I saying that right? I can't get that right.
Talokan.
Talokan. Okay, thank you.
No, Talokan.
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 Okay, Talokan.
Talokan. Yeah.
Talokan.
Which is something they came up with. It's something they came up with for this movie. In the comics, it's called Atlantis.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, there's a
but
lot of.
guess what? Fucking Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom comes out in 6 months or whatever, so you can't have these things confused.
Talokan, they're doing a lot of things that Wakanda is being blamed for, and so that is the thing that Everett Ross is in this movie to do. And also because
it's to be like, actually, they didn't do it.
Yeah, and also because Julia Louis-Dreyfus is like the anti-Nick Fury and is setting up for the Thunderbolts and things like that, so she also needs to be in this movie. Also, they were married, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like this answer.
No, it's not a good answer.
Sorry.
It's the correct answer, but it's not a good answer.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter, because this plot is
No.
material. And I've been really thinking about this. France carries out a sanctioned paramilitary operation on a foreign nation to steal their resources.
Yes.
And the people go, huh?
Whoops.
Well, the UN goes,
Womp womp.
And like Thunderbolt Ross becomes this like
Everett.
more like I don't care.
Different characters.
The white guy becomes this sort of moral grounding rod of like the U.S. is evil or whatever.
Uh huh.
But that doesn't go anywhere. We see him like with his dumb ex-wife in like 2 scenes,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that's his entire involvement in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking to
So-
those beads. The beads.
It is funny. He's like
Yeah.
hiding. It was kind of funny. He's like hiding the beads, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, put it behind his phone."
Mhm.
And fucking Val is like, "I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
I know you've been talking to him." Here's the thing about that plot, that subplot. It's so fucking impossibly minor that I almost don't care. Like it doesn't go anywhere. They shouldn't have been in the film, but they also only have like 3 scenes that total 3 minutes, maybe, in a 2 hour and 41-minute film. So like, I'm like, okay, all right, you gotta somehow, I guess, connect Val and Ross for whatever the fuck reason you have in the future. They're probably both going to be in Secret Invasion, or Ross is in Secret Invasion. Val is, of course, in multiple projects. So, you got the connective tissue there. Ross was in the first one, so yeah, have him back. And the idea that Wakanda is like, now a thing for the rest of the world in the UN and political negotiations and stuff. Yeah, okay, he's the one that knows them best, so like, But when it doesn't go anywhere, like, you really expect there to be the U.S. getting involved, or the UN getting involved with that final conflict, or there to be a ending scene or a post-credit scene in which things are brought to light, or there's some resolution for this, or Val does something exceptionally evil, except for put him in chains in the back of a car with the tree, or whatever. But it doesn't materialize at the end, which I think is why, even though it is so infinitesimally small in this film, it's like, what? Why'd you even fucking try?
Yeah. A quick aside here. So they break Everett Ross out of going to prison at the end of this movie. Is Zach Panther real? Is he gonna be the first white Wakandan? Is he gonna live in Wakanda now?
No, that was White Wolf. Bucky Barnes lived in
you're
Wakanda.
right.
Yeah.
Well, Bucky was the first white Wakandan. You're very
He was the
correct.
first Zach Panther.
He was the first Zach Panther. Oh, is that joke gonna make? That joke's not gonna make sense for a lot of people. I feel like that's a pretty niche internet meme. Is the Zach
It makes
Panther
sense to
meme?
me.
Okay.
I also like the T'Challa, Timothy Chalamet one. That one's funny too.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Oh, let's see. Okay,
Circle back to the action.
Yeah, so let's circle back to the action, because I want to talk some positives here, because we've been talking a lot of negatives, and I don't want to think
But
that
have
I'm
we
more
really?
negative. What? Sorry.
Or have we really been talking that much
100%.
negative?
Yeah, we've been
I don't
talking
know, it
about a
doesn't
lot
feel
of
that way to me.
criticisms for this.
100% we have them.
Yeah. The only positive that we've really given is some of Letitia Wright's performance, or maybe most of her performance. Telekin and Tina Huerta, and Namor subsequently. But the action, I feel, is pretty solid. I think it's pretty solid in this. I quite enjoyed the whole Cambridge chase. Getting Riri introduced.
Best action sequence in the movie.
Getting Riri introduced to Shuri and Okoye, and then them bickering and stuff like that, and she's got an Iron Man suit, and then she's blasting off into the sky, taking out a drone and stuff like that, and then mapping out correctly with Euler's theories how that's gonna crash into the police cars in front of the bridge. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's the good. In my opinion, that's the
good
action
action
sequence.
scene?
That is not only good conceptually. I think there are a few that are good conceptually. The Taliban attack on Wakanda is great conceptually.
Yeah.
In execution, it's a little bit rocky. The attack on the boat is great conceptually.
Oh, yeah.
In execution, a little bit rocky. That final fight, great conceptually, but a little bit rocky in execution. But I do really think that the only one that's going to stick with me, other than maybe a handful of shots of all the Talcans attacking it both from the bottom, or there's a couple shots in each of these that I think stick out. But in terms of the editing, the choreography, the CGI, there's a lot of as I said as watching in the theater, Mortal Kombat cutscene looking ass people doing Mortal Kombat cutscene looking ass things, and I'm like, there's not really weight or choreography to these things because it's so edited around and so CGI avoiding but also laden at the same time that none of the action sequences really stick with me. Though, and maybe this is not true in terms of runtime or number of action sequences, I feel like they recognized it wasn't the strong suit and instead focused more on those geopolitical interpersonal things, which I think are where the weight of the movie and its quality lies in that writing and the performances. So I don't like the action in this movie. I don't think it's very good, except for key moments. But I don't really care that much, I guess.
Oh, sure. Abram.
Tanner, I just don't think that this multi-million, like $100 million movie needs my like ration of praises. So I don't give a fuck. I think the action sucks.
Oh, okay.
You're like, oh, let's circle back to the positives. Fuck them. I hate the action in this movie. That's not
Okay.
that true. I just thought it'd be funny to phrase it that way.
Okay.
I think that the action is about. I think the action is about as good or as bad as I can expect out of most of these movies. I thought, to your point, talking about the sort of difference between the conceptual ideas of the action sequences and execution, I love the idea of these French like oath keepers or whatever the fuck they are showing up to break into that.
Keepers. That's a solid 2022 reference for you folks.
I don't even get that one.
That's you're better off for not understanding.
Yeah, that's
what
good.
I meant by that.
We'll keep you innocent, Tucker.
Showing up to break open that vault at the beginning of the movie, and then it turns out that they're all like the guard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought that was
yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
You're right. No, actually, that's a good action sequence as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also, so is Taliban attacking the mining rig and like sirening the guys to, like jump off the ship. That's fucking great.
I like that. That's very good.
I just think that the editing is not very good. Like when you're watching the guards fight the guys, I'm like, it's cutting. You're cutting so much. If I would be very surprised if these people are actually doing this choreography for real. So just don't cut as much. Even if it looks like Mortal Kombat, I'd rather see it than be cut around.
I think that the going theory for the good old action scene editors at Marvel Studios is, if we just do this for every movie, eventually people will stop complaining about it because it's just an evergreen issue. Maybe that's what their thinking is.
There are, but it's just disappointing because I think there are some cool ideas. Now, first of all, it goes back to the problem of the CGI, but I wouldn't do like people hanging off whales and underwater shit when James Cameron is about to absolutely embarrass you in literally 5 weeks.
It doesn't matter. It's the same. All the money goes to the same place, Abram. It's all Disney money.
But I do love the idea. Like they're on like fucking orcas and stuff. How
Yeah,
cool
that's
is
cool.
that?
Ooh, that shot where the orca like flings the guy off of this.
Oh, that's
awesome.
dope.
That's what I want to shout out. There's all these like little moments of kinetic energy that I really love. Flaying that up. I love one of my favorite shots in the entire movie is when M'Baku and the other guys are belaying the guards and the camera watches them run and then like tilts over as they all jump to go fight the Telecons as they're climbing up the side of the boat. Mm-hmm. Like there are good shots and moments and ideas through all of the action.
Yeah,
but it's just like I'm doing this the entire time. I'm like, where's I can't see it. What's happening? And I just found
you're pulling a John Cena the whole time. I can't believe it. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Abram just doing this in the theater.
I
can't see anything.
If I had stopped doing that, I probably would like the movie more.
Yeah. Anything else there? Otherwise, I do want to get to where Tucker pointed out a lot of this movie's strengths lie, which is the interpersonal here. Because we only really talked about Shuri and Namor. We got to get to a lot of the other players here. I think most importantly, of course, is Angela Bassett as Ramonda, which in the weeks leading up to this film, I saw that she has shot up the supporting actress predictions for some major outlets for predicting the Oscars. And I feel that is not entirely unwarranted. I think she's pretty great in this movie.
Abram?
Yeah, I think she is too. I think she's got that amazing moment when she's sort of banishing Okoye.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's like, my fucking family is gone or whatever. And I think she delivers that very well.
Ramonda.
I think she delivers that very well. But I do think that sort of, for me, it goes back a little bit to the problem of Shuri. Is when the problem is the writing of the performance. I feel like we don't get enough time with the Queen to really have her give a lot of really great moments, because the ones she has I think are really interesting,
Yeah.
But having her ostensibly die off screen when it's telegraphed to the audience that she's gonna survive, she's just gonna take her up out of the water, felt very weird. I didn't like how her character was handled, I suppose, and I felt like her death and funeral were really fast. It felt like we had to
Yeah,
get on to the
good
next
point.
plot point,
Hmm.
which is disappointing. Because I agree with you, Tanner. When she can really give it, she does.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. The reason that I would not personally campaign for her to be in supporting actress or anything like that isn't because Angela Bassett's not a fantastic actress, not because I think she's much more interesting in this movie than she was in the first one. Obviously, she's a lot more screen time. She's a much more involved presence. I think she has amazing dynamics with each of these characters, and the presence that she gives off is quite reminiscent of the ways that that Chadwick Boseman was as T'Challa in that first movie. Of when she walks in the room, there's a commanding presence there.
Yeah.
And even Winston Dukas and Baku, like, this brash guy who's hooting and hollering, will
Big boy.
bow
Yeah,
his
big
head
man.
when the Queen Mother comes in, or the way that Nakia reacts to her when she shows up in Haiti. Like, there are these great moments of not only her performance but like presence and interaction and reverence that she has, and I think she's really fascinating as this political figure that we've never really seen in the MCU, and not for Wakanda, because we were focused so much on Wakanda, there wasn't this external worry that we now have. And watching her roll up to the UN and bring 6 guys to their knees, and there's some really interesting moments here of her as a leader and as a political force, and what her death means to the nation and to Shuri, and like everyone respects her. Like, for everyone else around her, you can feel like, okay, yeah, Okoye and Nakia have this little bit of tension, and Okoye and M'Baku certainly don't like each other, and like there are disconnects everywhere. But when you look at like Ramonda, everyone respects her, and she's such an interesting and compelling presence in this film. She's a really great part of this film, and I do think that her death is another one of those poorly edited moments. You're right. Of it looks like she's gonna make it, and then we cut away for like watch Namor do a thing, or watch them walk in the room, and then just
Yeah.
chill on the ground. It's like, damn. Like, give this character like a moment. Like, I want to see her crest the water and put Riri's body out there as she, like, the last vestiges of life leave her body. Like, of course, that's a little bit gratuitous, but I do think that she should have been given like a heroic moment, not cut away from in a really awkward way.
I've got a question to pose.
Pose your question.
Tanner, you raised this point about a supporting actress nomination. I'm curious, as 2 boys who spend your time in consternation with the politicking of the Oscars quite often.
We love it.
What do you think the chances of a Wakanda Forever BP nomination are?
Lower than originally anticipated. I think with I've only seen a handful of scores for this movie, but I don't think an average 7 out of 10 is enough to get this into the Best Picture race. Especially, Abram, as you noted, when we have Avatar: The Way of Water coming out in just about a month. And as I said privately, I've never put this on the internet, so in many ways it's not a real claim I ever made. I was always like, it's gonna be one or the other, and as of right now, it's gonna be Avatar.
Yeah, well, if that pans out, though,
Yeah.
I think for me, I can actually, I said no fucking way this can happen. There is a chance. The legacy of this movie, the fact that the first one was nominated, the fact that this one does feature so heavily the emotional impact and legacy of Chadwick Boseman, and the fact that it will make a shitload of money and it'll do really well for representation and continue the culture of Wakanda and all of that. I think there is a chance that it gets in, though. For me, even though I do like this movie, and as we talk more about it, I think that, and as I hopefully watch it again sometime soon and think about it more, I think this movie will rise for me in terms of its strength outweighing its weaknesses. But I also think that it's such a glaring example of the rushed nature of CGI and editing and using the volume. Like, this is not a Best Picture quality film. it's a good movie, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. But I would not want to see it in Best Picture because I don't want a Best Picture nominee to have these shots where you got to cut from the knees up because you can't see where we got to make sure you don't see like where they're actually standing because we got to just put a thing right behind them so you can put them wherever you want. Like there are such glaring, obvious, low quality technical aspects to this film that are frankly I'm really disappointed by, that I would not want to see this nominated for Best Picture.
Fair point.
Because I'm assuming people were saying that it had a chance.
Yeah, easily they were. Seeing that fucking trailer, which, boy, how did they cherry pick some shots for that?
The trailer's better than the movie.
Trailer.
Yeah, trailer is better.
That's one of the trailers of all time. Frankly.
That actually reminds me. That reminds me of another criticism I have of the film. The soundtrack.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the soundtrack?
Yeah, it's notably quiet in scenes where I'm like, there should be score here, especially in some fight scenes.
When Okoye is fighting the Telecons for the first time on that bridge.
Yeah.
The film is largely silent, and now obviously like we're mostly conditioned by modern film being very much driven sonically to keep you engaged. So like it feels weird to see a modern film with an absence of sound for a lot of its sequences.
Mm-hmm.
But there are obviously moments where it's deeply intentional, like as we're closing the film, or the moment of silence as the Marvel logo is forming, which is shots of Chadwick. But like,
a very silent moment.
Watching that fight sequence, I'm like, well, the first Black Panther I think was so culturally important because Kendrick Lamar put together such a interestingly curated soundtrack for the film.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Rihanna's song, which is good, and there's also that vocalized track that I love when you're going down into the city of Telecon.
Yes,
but
I also like the track when Shuri shows up as in the Black Panther suit for the first time. I like that one. And also we have Red Hot Chili Peppers in here, just briefly. That's pretty fun. That's pretty fun.
It just needed more, and I felt like it didn't live up to the legacy of the first film in that respect. And also from a scoring perspective, where the majority of the score is just the Wakandan drums as like a leitmotif through like various things happening.
Yeah, and then like techno score, because it's like
the synth was
Shuri's more technical.
Yeah.
More technology-y than the cultural aspects of Wakanda. And I do think that I understand that from a thematic lens of shifting the focus over to her, but it doesn't. I was waiting for there to be like the score moment that is gonna make this super distinct, and I'm gonna remember this. I'm gonna remember this theme, but it never really happens, and it isn't until like I didn't realize the lack of that until like the final shot when. They're all standing on top of the boat and they're flying away, and it starts the ba 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 ba, and it's like I'm like, wait, hold on, yep, that's the Black Panther. I know that, and that's a fucking great score moment, and like, oh yeah, it's just powerful. Where's Shuri's version of that? Like, I wish that she had a more consistent leitmotif, and yeah, maybe it's more techno, maybe it doesn't bring over the exact ideas from the first score, but it didn't really feel like there were musical motifs enough that like stuck out to me that I will associate with this film, which is disappointment because the score's so great in the first one.
Yeah, I feel like there's one last major thing we need to talk about, and it's something we brought up at the beginning, which is that this film is obviously intended to be a send-off for Chadwick Boseman and his appearances as T'Challa in the MCU. Do you guys think that it succeeds in being that? And we can also obviously talk about the post-credit scene in this sort of question as well.
I think.
Go, Tucker. Go ahead.
Okay, I think it does, but I think it does because I don't know. I feel like they did the best they could with that. I mean, like, as tasteful as you can get, having him die off screen, having his impact felt, having a funeral for him, having his presence be consistent through the film, and he's never really forgotten. As we said at the beginning, I still do think that is something that holds the movie back from like really gaining its own identity. It feels like it's in the shadow, but because it's in the shadow and because it's such a consistent force, and I didn't feel like they did anything particularly distasteful. No, I do think that it is the send off that he deserved, but also it does hinder the movie in certain ways. I wish that we could have had a section of the movie be that, but then just free off of that for the rest of the film. I don't really know. Maybe that's not even true, but in the moment, this is how I feel.
Sure. Abram?
I feel like the film wasn't allowed to mourn him in an especially genuine way. I found the cold open into the moment of silence for the Marvel Studios, logo formation to be so fast, and then the moments of reflection on his life just sort of bleed into the plot to where like it's the few outbursts of emotion we do see, like when the Queen is like, my fucking family is dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I felt like the film was allowed to sort of release that energy that I think it and the audience and Ryan Coogler and all of the cast and the crew and everything have. But I was disappointed that we didn't get to sort of feel that rawness more. And I think it goes to your point, Tucker, for earlier of like, it feels like those emotional highs aren't there. And to me, I think when I said that the film made me a little bit sad at the beginning of the discussion is because it felt like there's a lot of like repressed feeling throughout the entire film.
Sure.
And to end it so quickly on this montage of old footage, I found to just be...
Yeah.
I found it to be disappointing in how we couldn't let anybody sit with that. We had to immediately get into credits, and we had to immediately get into a post-credit scene, which doesn't undermine Chadwick Boseman's legacy, but seemingly is setting up a character to supplant him or replace him in some way.
Yeah.
Which
We'll see.
I did find to be distasteful, and I will be really upset if he actually becomes the Black Panther. But I think that this is, and I don't mean this is going to sound really harsh, but I don't think that the MCU as a storytelling vehicle is emotionally mature enough to process the trauma in front of and behind the camera of Chadwick Boseman passing. It just isn't. And that's not me saying that the MCU is for babies or not developed, but these are enormous fucking blockbusters about lore and interconnected storytelling, and they're not about unpacking trauma like the death of Chadwick Boseman. And so I just knew that it was not going to be what I wanted it to be, but I was nonetheless disappointed by how the emotion of what his life meant was sort of unpacked on screen. I don't think it worked.
Abram, you bring something up that maybe the MCU isn't equipped to do big important things like unpacking the trauma, the collective trauma of Chadwick Boseman's death. And I can kind of sort of wrap this into a closing thoughts of sorts, because I feel like a lot of times when a new MCU project is announced and we get a trailer for it or something like that, there's a lot of expectations like, oh, this MCU movie is going to be like this. With Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's like this MCU movie is going to be a giant international global thing about the conflicts of these two nations and how America is like sort of behind the scenes, and what does it mean for Wakanda to be a presence on the global scale. And I think we can all admit that that's not fully explored in this film. I think there is, as I said, there was a lot of expectations going into this, and I think there's a lot of expectations for every MCU movie to be completely different and unique unto itself. And I think as it continues, those expectations need to be tempered, because at the end of the day they are just about lore and interconnected storytelling, and planting characters that will show up again in a Disney Plus show coming out in 2.5 years. So I think that is maybe a reason why the response to Black Panther Wakanda Forever might be middling. And maybe perhaps why I wanted something more out of it that it was perhaps never fully intended to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though. Where I would not personally push back, but just sort of generally push back, is I do think this movie is getting great scores.
It
has like high 80s on Rotten Tomatoes, which of course critics, but I don't see a world in which this is like middle of the pack for people.
No,
I think
I don't
that
think
the
so.
majority of audiences are going to watch this, are going to feel the weight of the passing of Chadwick Boseman, are going to feel the what I feel the respect that this movie does give his legacy, excluding key moments. But for me, my expectation was on the other side. Abram, is I thought that it was going to be an opening scene of Chadwick Boseman passing, and then I didn't feel like they were going to handle the passing like at all. And frankly, I was surprised by how genuinely it felt like it was handled well across the course of the film, even though again it holds it back in some circumstances. Though, and I do think that for me is what sets this film apart, and why I think that it will grow on me over time and on rewatches. I do think that there is a lot of genuine quality here. I think Ryan Coogler is a great filmmaker. I think that everyone involved with this clearly cared a lot. Is really just the situation that this movie has been put in that are its issues. It is COVID, it is editing, it is green screen, it is special effects teams being worked their fucking asses off for all these projects, is the passing of Chadwick Boseman, and I think they honestly did the best they could, which is not a huge compliment to a movie. But given the circumstances, I think this movie did turn out pretty well and feels pretty distinct from the rest of the MCU. This is a lot more, it's not maybe not to the peaks that you want it to, Abram. This is a lot more reflective of a character study than we see out of most Marvel movies. There are very few quippy, jokey moments in this film.
Yes.
We aren't cutting away to something silly when something happens. The fantastical elements of this film, of Talokan, of the history of Wakanda, are treated with reverence. They're not treated as one-off bits. This is a much more serious film, frankly, than I expected out of the MCU, and I do think that gives its own identity in a really fascinating way, and I do really want to rewatch it because I feel like there is more to pick up on in terms of that political subtext of understanding these characters. But on a first watch, I was able to pick up enough to where, and talking through it, I do think that this stuff is all really there, and so my opinions on it have grown a good amount since we started talking about it. But any other final thoughts from you guys? Sorry, or anything to respond to what I just said?
I mean, I'll give my final thought. I will just note, by the way, that based on 57 critic scores and Metacritic for Wakanda Forever is a 67. So,
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, the scores I think are more tepid than you are letting on, Tucker,
Okay.
but I think that's
Okay.
also because Rotten Tomatoes, as Martin Scorsese was just saying in whatever interview recently, is like a humongous spectacle of basically a meaningless number. Because it's got a good Rotten Tomatoes score, but those 67 is not glowing by any stretch of the imagination. But Tucker, I think your idea of them doing the best they can, I think, is apt, but I think it's also an indictment on this entire process of the MCU. Sure. And in the sort of exploration we've taken throughout the Untold Marvel project, I think I have reconciled a lot of my major issues with the MCU and appreciated it sort of on its level for what it is and how it approaches storytelling in its own unique and masterful way. But I think that Wakanda Forever, much in the way that Black Panther became sort of transcendent of its position as a comic book movie, I expected something similar from Wakanda Forever, especially given all of the circumstances you are laying out. So to me, this is like an illustration of how far an MCU movie can go. Because it is more serious and it is doing its best, but I don't think its best is where it should be for this story. And so I end up feeling kind of just deflated by the whole thing. I think that this is a better film than like Thor: Love and Thunder or things like that. But I think that the stakes were higher, and I think that the under-delivering is felt more here because I think this is a movie that actually matters beyond its characters being important to a universe.
No,
and
absolutely. It is definitely, in terms of like how the situation that I said they had to overcome. I think again, as I said, I think they did the best they could. But when you really think about the art of making a film such as this, the stakes of something culturally important as this, the passing of Chadwick Boseman, what divorced from the capitalistic reality that we frankly live in, a piece of art, a story such as this, should not have to do the best it can. It should be put aside for a few years. let everything simmer down, give it more time to boil, give the VFX artist more time to work on this, give it the quality it deserves, because I think this film would have been a lot better, obviously, without these things that are weighing down on it, these situations. I think there's such a good movie in here with a lot of heart and care, but it is pinpoked by, it's a bag of water, and it's pinpoked by, damn, I wish there wasn't so much volume green screen. Oh, the CGI. Oh, the editing. Oh, clearly this was rewritten. But, like, man, I think it turned out a pretty good product, which is not the greatest way to describe a movie, but they turned it out the best they could under the circumstances.
The very last thing I'll say before I get over to Tanner, because he keeps starting and I keep interrupting him.
That's okay.
You said it earlier. Avatar: Way of the Water and this movie go into the same pot. Disney is about to make a fucking $1 gazillion.
A $1 gazillion.
Something that's important should be delayed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Give them the time. Disney has the resources to tell this story right, but the fact that it turned out this way to me is an indictment on the entire Disney apparatus. That's all.
Absolutely.
I have 3.5 more things to say. Here we go. We're running them down. Tucker, I agree with you. I liked this movie when I walked out of the theater, and the pins that we're putting in it, as I kept noting throughout this review, we were talking a lot of criticisms, and I'm like, I don't want to keep criticizing this film, because I know that there was something I felt in that theater, and I walked out, and it's why I gave it, so spoilers for my score, a 3.5 out of 5. And I still feel that material is there, and I will probably rewatch it in the coming days, and maybe I'll be able to better cement those things, and maybe I won't. We'll see. The other things are less important, I would say. Well, actually, no. There is one overarching thing. Since we did get into...
Just fucking say
it. Since we did get into the larger Marvel issue here, I will be interested to see if these issues that we were talking about wane as the excuse of, oh, this movie was made during the pandemic, goes away and is not an excuse anymore. Will these issues resolve themselves? I tend to think no, but we will see.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The last two things are not important at all. They're just two thoughts that I had. Abram, I thought you'd be a big fan of this movie because Shuri and Namor have a Martha moment, as in BVS, because she's standing over him with the spear, and then they have a "we're not so different, you and I" moment.
Yes, and not only that, they spend like 3 minutes on a fucking montage of how not so different you and I they are.
Yeah,
I did think
our mom died, our mom died. I am sad. I have country. You have country.
Yeah.
I just wanted to lean over to Joe and be like, "Not so different, you and I." But like, no, this is a serious moment. Yeah. I should let this pass.
Namor destroying planes did feel a bit Snydery to me.
Sure. Yeah.
The amount of slow-mo in this movie this is unmatched in the MCU, and the amount of shallow depth of field is also unmatched in the MCU. And you know where my biggest complaints of both those criticisms ever were? The latest Zack Snyder film, fucking Army of Thieves. I don't know if you remember that review, but I liked that movie, but I loved both those criticisms.
Army of the Dead, Tucker, get it right. Army of Thieves is the one about thieves.
Shit! You're right.
Yeah.
But also, the slow-mo didn't really help the action here. There was a couple shots that were good, but should not have just kept slowing down these things. I don't like slow-mo that much sometimes.
Last, final thing, and then we can actually give it a score. I love the return of Michael B. Jordan. I think it's a really great moment. I was dreading, like, oh god, are they going to do like a CGI Chadwick Boseman reveal in this chair? Because they did a slow pan around. I'm like, oh no. Yeah. And then it's Michael B. Jordan, like, that's great. That's really cool. I love this for Shuri's character. I love seeing Michael B. Jordan back. He turns in a great performance in that scene. Love to see him back. I just wanted to shout that out.
Mm-hmm.
I think I probably would have caved for my own head in with the rock if they put Chadwick Boseman in this movie.
Everyone would have ran out of the theater, found the biggest rock that he could, ran back into the theater, and dropped it directly on his head.
In front of everyone.
In front of everyone.
There's one question that I have.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys can remember this line a little better than I did, but Ramonda and Shuri are sitting by the edge of the fucking lake, about to reminisce when we see Namor for the first time, and Ramonda gets interrupted. She's about to say something about T'Challa's passing or the illness or something, and then nothing. And then she gets interrupted by Namor. And that, as far as I know, never comes around. Maybe it's that he has a son?
Maybe. Could be.
Though, and so maybe it wasn't about the illness. Maybe it was just like, I gotta tell you something about your brother. I don't fucking remember. But like, that definitely requires a rewatch for me, because either I misread the scene, misremembering it, or they just literally did not bring that full circle.
All right.
Both are equally possible.
That's true. Okay. This has been a long haul, boys, but I think we're finally ready to give this Bad Larry a score. Shall we do it?
Yeah.
Okay. I have my score typed in 3, 2, 1. Beep, 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 boop, boop, boop. Ooh, a average score of a 6.9 here. Running down the totals, we have Tucker Hazel with a 7.5, me with a 7.2, and Abram Buhner with a 5.9. As I said, that averages out to a 6.9, and oh lord, we have to tie break here. God, it's been a while since we had to do this. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is tied with Iron Man 2, which is the better movie.
Christ.
Yeah. Which one is the better movie, folks?
Wow. Ooh, damn, these are really different.
Yeah, they are. They are very different. I'm gonna go Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
So am I.
Pretty easily.
Yeah, fine, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, for those fans who have been eagerly awaiting a new episode of the Untitled Marvel Project, who have been starved for weeks and weeks and weeks and months.
See this right here?
Yeah.
This is the bit. You know what they've been doing to it?
Oh, they've been chomping at it.
They've been champing at the bit. That's
there
the
it
phrase.
is. Excuse me.
Is it champing? The fuck does champing?
It's champing, but it's colloquially become chomping. This is true.
Okay. Regardless, this places Black Panther: Wakanda Forever at place number 17 in our overall ranking, above Iron Man 2 and below Avengers: Age of Ultron. Well, how about that?
Okay.
How about that, folks? As I said, this is a long haul, boys, and if you made it all the way through this review, congratulations, first and foremost. And, of course, let us know your thoughts on this film in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on this film in the Discord. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.